From the 22 News Plus studio, this is 22 News in Focus with Patrick Berry.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of InFocus. I'm your host, Patrick Berry. Have you ever wondered about what the Trustees of Reservations do? Well, I'm very lucky today to be joined across the desk by Katie Theoharides. Did I get it right?
You did.
I got it right. She is the president and CEO of the Trustees of Reservations, and she and I are going to talk about all the great work they're doing here in the Commonwealth to preserve open space, to preserve historical places. You've probably never heard of this organization, which is why we're here today. So, Katie, thank you for joining me. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me on.
Okay, give me the big overview. What is the Trustees of Reservations?
Yeah. So, did you have a special place in nature growing up? Some place you like to go?
So there were a couple of places. For me, in Westfield, Stanley Park.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Which is a little different. But then close to where you grew up in Hamden was Laughing Brook.
I lived across the street from Laughing Brook.
Oh, that's fun.
That was my special place.
All right.
Yes. And so, we at the Trustees were founded by someone who believed that everyone should have access to open space. That much like you can walk into a library and take out a book, you should be able to walk down the street into a park to enjoy the benefits that nature has to offer. And since that time, we were the oldest conservation organization with this mission of protecting private land and opening it up to the public.
Oldest organization nationally or across the state?
In the world, actually.
In the world?
Doing this work. We say
wow.
Nationally. The National Trust of England was founded 5 years after us. And the idea was we protect open space for everyone to access and enjoy. And that includes, in our mission, a lot of land that's important for nature and for the environment, and also historic buildings, museums, and special cultural landscapes.
So I guess one of my questions is, obviously the easy question is why? Why do we do that? But really, I guess why? Why preserve these things, especially open spaces? Because I have to think in today's world, the populations are growing. There's a need for development, jobs, housing. There's a lot of open spaces out there that I'm sure developers are looking at. So why should we be preserving those spaces?
So a lot of the land that we protect and that has been protected here in Massachusetts is land that is not as good for housing. It's far from public transit, far from community centers, and the land that we do protect in urban areas is so people have a chance to get outside and enjoy nature. I think it's something we take for granted, that open space is available and that you can walk across the street in the shade of trees, go to a park, go for a hike on the weekend. Without people who were thinking and planning and taking action to conserve that outdoor space, we wouldn't have it. And if you think of the Holyoke Range, for example, here in Western Mass, what a privilege it is to be able to go hike, see a view, go with a friend, get exercise in your day. Also importantly, clean air, clean water, carbon sequestration, flood mitigation, all of the things that build a cleaner, more resilient environment. I think the Quabbin's another good example. We wouldn't have all this clean water if someone hadn't had the foresight to protect a landscape like that.
In your travels, do you find a lot of people have never heard of the Trustees? Or if they have, like me, not really sure what you do?
Yeah. Well, it depends on where you are in the state. And so for folks who are used to getting outdoors, have been to some of our properties, there's more recognition. It's an old-fashioned name that's been with us since 1891. And so I think sometimes that people don't know what exactly that means. But if you see the T symbol when you're out hiking, that is land that we protect and open up to the public. And here in Western Mass, we have over a dozen properties, everything from Dinosaur Rock to Namcake out in the Berkshires. And just recently we acquired significant land in the Belchertown and Pelham area, as well as in Haydenville.
So when you protect these locations, do you buy the property? Does the organization purchase the property? And who do you purchase it from? Do you purchase it? Is it from a private owner, or is it you purchasing it from the state for preservation? How does
Great question.
Okay.
Yeah, and there's a whole variety of different tools we use for land protection. The most simple is we buy the land usually from a private landowner who wants to sell the land for conservation purposes.
Oh.
When we started, we were actually getting land donated to us semi-regularly. So people who cared passionately about the farmland they owned or the historic home they owned or the large landscape they owned and wanted to make sure it was protected forever. There are tax benefits when you make a donation like that. But these days, we're finding more and more we have to compete on the open market for land. We also are the state's largest holder of conservation restrictions. And so a conservation restriction is when the land stays in private ownership, but we essentially purchase the development rights. So
just kind of breaking that down. So say I own 50 acres.
Yep.
I wish. But I only need an acre. My house, my driveway, my acre. So the other 49 acres I give to you, I sell to you, even though I own it.
You could either give it to us, and then you can write off the value of developing those conservation of those lands through taxes, or you can sell us a conservation restriction. We'll pay you that value, and then you can carve out that 1 acre building lot, do everything you've always done, still own the land, the 50 acres. You just are not paying for the ability to develop them in the future, and that's a great way to preserve open space while keeping it in private ownership.
Are you finding that is happening more and more frequently? Because, you think of where we live here in the Pioneer Valley. There's a lot of farmland.
Yes.
A lot of unused farmland, or a lot of aging farmers whose the generations aren't picking up farming. Do you see that happening more and more frequently?
So one of the reasons we're accelerating the conservation work we're doing right now is we are at this pivotal moment for working landscapes, large conservation spaces, and forests and farms, like right here in the Valley. We have some of the oldest population of farmers and foresters in the country, and many of them are looking to turn over the land and don't necessarily have someone who wants to come in and forest or farm it. And so a great option is to put the land under a conservation restriction, allow it to stay as working farmland, but really help the next generation of farmers come in and continue that work because it reduces the overall tax burden on the land.
Very good. We are up on our first commercial break. We've got plenty more to talk about when it comes to the Trustees of Reservations. Stay with us. We're back in a moment.
This is 22 News in Focus with Patrick Berry. This is 22 News in Focus with Patrick Berry.
Welcome back, everyone, to this today's conversation here on the InFocus in the 22 News Plus studio. Katie Theoharides from the Trustees of Reservations is joining me here in the studios. I've learned so much in the first block of how you do what you do. So thank you very much for joining me. I appreciate it. When we left off, we were talking about the example of, say, I owned a bunch of land and I how do I preserve that? But you made a passing comment where in that scenario, the owner, I guess, could pass it on and it could be maintained as farmland or whatnot. But who does that? Like, so say I come to an agreement with the Trustees of Reservations to make that process. I'm an aging farmer. I can't maintain my farm anymore. Do you then seek out a farmer to do that, or how does that, or does it just go return to the wild?
So there's a bunch of ways that could go. We have had circumstances where we've bought land to protect it, put what's called an agriculture preservation restriction on it, which the state holds, making sure that it's forever in agriculture. And then we've looked for a buyer who wants to farm the land. More often than not, we are just holding the restriction. And the current farmer sells to the next generation or passes it on to the next generation. The other option is it may be taken out of farmland but conserved forever. And the opportunity there is that at some point it could go back to farmland if there was an interested farmer.
So part of our conversation was the aging farmers in Massachusetts, and that's happening more and more frequently?
Yes. So,
and that's a good thing for the trustees, right?
It's a great thing for the trustees. Another group in the area who's done a lot of this work is the Kestrel Land Trust, who's all along the Connecticut River Valley and has protected some of the most significant.
I've never heard of them.
They're great. They're great.
We'll
Kristen DeBoer is the executive director, and she's fantastic. But some of the really important work to conserve fertile land, upland habitat that's important for biodiversity and important for people to be able to access for recreation, has been on land that was once really agricultural.
So does some of that, can that be preserved or repurposed for like solar arrays or anything like that? Or the land you're trying to preserve is either to return to its natural state or for farming?
Exactly. So,
Okay,
so more the latter, to maintain as natural habitat and open space for people, or to return to agricultural use.
So
there is dual use solar, where sometimes you have solar and farming at the same time, but this wouldn't be to clear cut and do solar.
So how do you find out about land or buildings that need preservation?
So we maintain a list, and we look at parcels around the state. We have a strategic plan that actually calls for us to protect 12,000 acres of land in the next 5 years, which is a big ramp up.
Wow.
But in that work, looking for important places to protect, we also get a lot of phone calls from folks who really care passionately about their land and want to see it protected forever. And as we've ramped up our work to conserve more land, we've heard more and more from people who care about their special place and want to see us protect it.
So I live in Westfield, and there are some older buildings in Westfield, like there are across New England.
Yeah.
If somebody said, if we're looking at a building in Westfield, that might be built in the early 1800s or 1700s, and it's, some people are like, we just got to tear that down, but there's other people who say we need to save it. Do we contact you for like an investigation of, is it worth it or not?
Well, there's other groups that really do preservation of buildings.
Okay.
We will take a building in the event that it's tied to a large landscape.
Like the William Cullen
Bryan Homestead, which is on a significant tract of land, including old growth forest. Really beautiful place out in Covington if folks haven't been. But we are much more interested in protecting large landscapes than we are in buildings. We do take care of a large number of historic homes, but they're always tied to a special landscape.
And Namkeg, which is another one of your properties, same idea.
Same idea. So Namkeg is out in Stockbridge, and it has a fantastic garden landscape with just wonderful landscape design. So it was a single owner, a woman, Mabel Choate, who was really focused on protecting it as well as doing significant landscape design there. And so when you go, there's a spectacular blue staircase through a grove of birches. The name of the landscape designer is escaping me at the moment. But that landscape is just spectacular. We've opened it up, so that everyone can enjoy it.
And it's a year-round.
Year-round, we have a winter lights there that's tremendously popular, and the Great Pumpkin Show.
Pumpkin carving. And then the gardens, as you mentioned, in the summertime.
Yes. Okay. Yes. And it has tea parties and yoga and programming all through the summer and spring. Oh, there's also a bulb show in the spring, which is coming up, and we all need color,
a little bit of spring, exactly,
and bulbs, as we have 2 feet of snow outside.
So how many of the 120 plus properties, for lack of a better description, how many of those have buildings versus how many are just open spaces?
So we have about 350 buildings across the state. So it's a large portfolio of things to maintain. Some of them are staff housing, some we rent out, and then some are these really special historic homes. Our largest one, well, I don't know if this is our largest building, but one of our sort of most impressive buildings is the Crane Estate at Castle Hill, which is part of a large beach, thousands of acres of beach, and a big mansion in Ipswich. Yes.
Okay. All right. Yep.
Yes. So for folks who've come from Western Mass gone to the beach, that may have been one of the places they've experienced.
Is that a wedding venue?
It is a fantastic wedding venue. Okay. There's a large lawn in LA.
Okay.
That is where the weddings happen.
It's funny. I was out in my wife and I did a weekend getaway to Rockport, Gloucester, and I wanted to see that, and I mixed up that and the Hammond Castle, which, by the way, the Hammond Castle
is lovely.
Exactly.
Yes, it's
but
lovely.
As we walk away from the Hammond Castle, I'm like, that doesn't seem as big as I thought it was.
Yes.
But it's the one in Ipswich.
You got to get to Ipswich. And did you get to Halibut Point while you were in Rockport?
I don't know.
That is this fantastic rocky point that juts out into the Atlantic, and we protect that with the State Department of Conservation and Recreation.
Very good. We are up on our second commercial break. Stay with us. Plenty more to talk about, especially some Western Mass things. We're coming back in just a moment.
This is 22 News in Focus with Patrick Berry. This is 22 News in Focus with Patrick Berry.
Welcome back, everyone, to today's edition of In Focus. I'm your host, Patrick Berry. We're here in the 22 News Plus studios. We're talking today about the Trustees of Reservations. Sitting across the desk from me is their president and CEO, Katie Theoharides. Katie, thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate you coming in and giving me some of your time. You must travel the state all the time. That must be part of your role, is getting out and about and going to probably some of the most beautiful pieces of land within the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
It's a great job.
And you mentioned earlier there's more than a dozen here in Western Mass.
Mm-hmm.
Is the goal to increase the properties here in Western Mass?
So absolutely. As we are working to bite off this 12,000 acres of conservation, a big portion of that is going to be in Western Mass, particularly
just because we have the open space.
There's a lot of open space. It's really important from a biodiversity perspective. It's close to population centers in Springfield and Holyoke, and it's important land to protect from a climate change perspective as well. There's a great north-south corridor running up through the foothills of the Berkshires.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Very cool. There's something called the Nature for Massachusetts. Explain that to me.
Yeah, so it's a campaign to get conservation on the ballot and to increase the revenue that can be spent on conserving land and protecting water and habitat and biodiversity. And we are working on it in partnership with Mass Audubon, Conservation Law Foundation, and a number of other partners. But the idea, and this will be on the 2026 ballot as a ballot
one of the many initiatives this
fall.
One
of the 11 initiatives next fall. But this one's important because, as I said earlier, I think people take protection of nature for granted. And this is our only planet. We don't have another place to go. And so things that we take for granted, clean air, clean water, the ability to go outside on a summer day and feel a clean breeze, all of this comes to us from nature. What this initiative would do is take a small portion of the sales tax that comes in from recreational equipment, golf clubs, backpacks, ski jackets, and direct it towards open space conservation and the very thing that allows us to do those outdoor activities.
So where else do you get your funding from? If this initiative doesn't pass, or how have you been funded since 1890s?
Yeah, so as I said, a lot of it has been private philanthropy, donations of land. We do a lot of fundraising ourselves as an organization. The state does have some funding for conservation. They have around $15 to $18 million a year. It's discretionary. So it's one of the first things that gets cut,
of course,
when there are other pressures. And so this effort would raise $100 million a year.
Wow.
And the state has a target, as many states do across the country, of protecting 30% of our land in the state by 2030. And to do that, we need significantly more resources to protect it. And, we're not at a point anymore where people are donating large chunks of land. People have to be made whole when they part with their land. And so buying a lot of that land is part of this.
There is a chunk of property not far from where we're sitting in Haydenville, Northampton, something like that, right? It was an old golf course.
Yes. So the Beaverbrook Golf Course.
Okay.
We just purchased it last summer, and we are restoring it to a floodplain and community park, a community conservation park where people can get outside, walk their dogs. People right now are going cross-country skiing. Lots of different things you can do there, but we're taking what was once a resource for some and turning it into a resource for everyone to access in their community.
So with something like the old Beaverbrook Golf Course, you just say no more golfing and just kind of let it return to the wild? Is that, and then will there be trail? I mean, you think of a golf course now, it's, there's fairways and there's open space there.
Yes. So one of the great things about golf course restoration is we can make use of the trails that are there, which are very accessible, easy to use if you're in a wheelchair or pushing a stroller or on cross-country skis. So we are looking at really keeping the trails in place and then understanding the wetlands. There's a stream system that goes through that actually was responsible for some significant flooding in 2023. So when you saw those pictures of Haydenville and Williamsburg with floodwaters, it's really coming from this brook, Beaver Brook, that goes through the property. And so one of the things we're intent on doing is returning the brook to a floodplain system where it can accumulate water as the rains fall.
And by doing that, that will protect downstream properties and physical properties.
And it's not just that area. So the Beaver Brook drains into the Mill River, which runs directly through Florence and Northampton. And so those communities are more vulnerable to these flashy floods we've been getting.
So how did you come about the acquisition of Beaver Brook?
So the owner had it on the market.
Okay.
And our land trust affiliate, the Hilltown Land Trust, which is up in Ashfield, saw it on the market, was interested, also knew it was really important both from a community access perspective and for biodiversity and climate resilience. And so we had an opportunity to purchase it, and we raised a bunch of funding, including a municipal vulnerability preparedness grant that we were able to bring to it from the state to help with some of the flood mitigation work.
I'm a golfer.
Yes.
And I know, golf courses struggle.
Yes.
So is that a potential sort of property stream, pardon the pun, that, as golf courses struggle, do you approach them, or does it, like Beaver Brook had a specific niche, floodplain, there were issues with it. Or are just golf courses in general a target for you?
Well, so this is the first one we've done.
Okay.
But the Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Program from the state, and that was something I helped start when I was with the Baker administration, has done a couple of these now with the idea that as a golf course closes, if it's going to close, they can be really important from a habitat and climate resilience perspective, as well as a community resource. And we're not at all anti-golfing, but if a golf course is going to go out of business, this is a good use for it.
Might as well repurpose it for nature.
Right. And we have also asked the question if there's a housing opportunity as part of that as well. So these things, conservation and housing, can actually be combined quite well if done with some thinking behind it.
It's funny being a golfer. Obviously, it's a lot of exercise, but it makes sense if you convert it. The trails are already the cart paths are already there, so they're perfect walking for all abilities.
Right. And you see them in the winter. Kids go sledding on them, cross country skiing.
Exactly.
This wasn't the case here. Kids were not allowed on the golf course in the winter, but now people are out there and seeing friends and walking their dogs and getting a little cross country ski in, which we also have up in Notchu.
That's right.
Which is in Windsor. So 25 miles of trails on 3,000 acres up there.
One of my good friends is up there all the time.
It's a great place.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Katie Theoharides. Did I say it right?
You did.
All right.
You got it now.
I'm so happy for myself. Thank you so very much for educating me and all of our viewers on the Trustees of Reservations.
Thanks so much for taking the time. Likewise.
This is 22 News in Focus with Patrick Berry.